now we're going to be hearing from Lionel Legros. Legros? I'm sorry?
Legros.
Legros.
The S is silent.
Okay. He was born in Haiti, in Haiti. He emigrated to New York in 1966. He has been a passionate denouncer of the dictatorships that have been taking place on both sides of the island. He started the first Haitian radio program in 1969 in New York. He's a longtime resident of Harlem. He's a board member of the Haitian Information Center. He currently teaches at Kingsborough Community College and York College, French and Haitian history and culture. And today he's going to be speaking about geography and the history of how the island was divided.
Well, good afternoon. This is good. Yeah. Good afternoon. I'd like to ask the people here.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. How many of you consider yourself as Spanish people? I'm happy. Okay, because I think that this has been a major problem in understanding the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. At first, and as the leaflet and Claudia clearly stated, it was one island, inhabited by the Indians, they say Arawak, and all of a sudden, you know, between these islands, and if you follow history very well, that there's something called island hopping, which means that these Indians actually came from the coast of Venezuela, moved to Trinidad, and so on and so forth until they reached Cuba. So these are the same so-called Indians, indigenous people, that have been moving. So when Columbus came, and under the cross of the Church of Spain to discover us, it was one of the first irony of history, because he didn't, I was going to quote you, he didn't discover crap, because there's been so much between these islands that they even claim that the Caribs were bad people that would go into these different islands and eat people. So this is the beginning of white history and actually European history. So during the Renaissance, Europeans got very interested after they'd been to Ireland to do the dirty jobs during the Middle Age. So they decided to come to our islands, and so they followed the lead of the Portuguese, and Christopher Columbus became the first voyage under Spanish flags. And this is very important to understand, because it was the same year that Spain was actually expelling the Jews who had not been converted to Christianity. So Christopher Columbus actually came with a set mindset. Anything that was not European, anything that was not Christian, they could destroy. And you could understand that the contact between the Europeans and the Americas and the Americans, and I mean the indigenous people, were cause for conflict and war. And if you follow history very well, you'll understand that the European disease where the indigenous had no resistance to, so they died by thousands, by millions. Smallpox, measles, influenza killed more Indians than the violent conflict in the European nations. So Ferdinand and Isabella spurred the soldiers on to victory by reminding them of the Crusade struggle to drive non-Christians out of the Holy Land. Ferdinand and Isabella made the subject, also set the subject against the Jews who had been living peacefully in Spain for many years. So in order for you to understand how when Christopher Columbus came, you have to understand the whole European mindsets. anything that's not white, that's not Christian, could be destroyed. And as I said earlier, in a place like Spain where Jews and Muslims were living together for many years, after the whole Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, then they started to deport them. So the Spaniard came with two Americas with that kind of mindset. So the Indians were not Christians, they were not whites, so they were free, ready to be killed, robbed, tortured, and enslaved. Now, the Spanish rulers were mainly interested in wealth in the New Spain. No matter what they say about discovery, bringing Christianity, all they were interested in was really profit. And if you look at the foundations of capitalism, you'll understand that free land, I will come to the African part, black peoples are really working are the basis for this society, for this capitalism society, and all of Europe society. There was only one exception when there was a Spanish priest who realized that I guess he got to be more Christian. He decided that they could not mistreat the so-called indigenous people the way they did. Bartolomé de las Casas decided that, okay, he was going to be the protector of the Indians. So we'll stop exploiting the Indians, let's import some blacks. And this is how we were brought from Africa into this new world, so-called new world. So in 1542, the king prohibited enslavement of the Indians, but this law was started also the slavery of black people. Moving very fast, you have to understand that when you have these colonies, the stronger one would try to really take advantage and capture the weaker one. So Spain and France had been at war for a long time. And through that division was brought into that island. When France occupied the western part of Hispaniola, they call it Little Spain, then the Spanish were occupying that part of the eastern part. So through that treaty, and because they were at war in Europe, and because Spain lost, everything became the property of France. So when we, as West, let's call it West Saint-Domingue, we fought against the French and established the first black republic. You have to understand that the whole island became part of Haiti because it was the property of France, and since Spain had lost to France, then it became also part of Haiti. It wasn't anything about the way they put it, that we occupied the Dominican Republic and so on and so on, because the Dominican Republic had not existed at that time. So when the slaves heard about the French Revolution, when they realized that all the struggle that they went through during the Middle Passage, and they were not succeeded, under the leadership of Toussaint Louverture in 1791, they had this, an uprising against the colonists, and it became the first independent black nation. Now obviously the French that had left that western part and went east, General Ferrand, and a small part of the Spaniard, people that consider themselves as Spaniard, or the Creole, they got together and established, they decided that it was time for them to have their own countries. So they had the reason to resent the Spanish rules, and what we will, for the convenience, call the New Dominicans. And because they work very, very hard, and the army of Napoleon had conquered Spain. So you see the whole conflict between French and Spain also got transcendence in also Dominican Republic and the new Haiti. What you have to understand at the same time is that there's a whole ideological question going on between what is the world and how is it going to be set up? Are we going to have republics on these islands? Are we going to have monarchy? And that resulted in a lot of confusion, even in the part of Haiti that really became independent. Are we going to have a monarchy or a republic? After Toussaint Louverture was captured and sent back to France, that was a big fight. The country was divided into basically three parts, let's say. Up north, we have something of a monarchy because some Haitians decided that monarchy was the best way of doing things, and therefore they applied everything that they were applying in England. And you had the southern part that also wanted to have a republic. So this is under Pétion, who was basically a mulatto. But I think it was more important to see him, what he was wanted to do is to establish a republic. And this thing has not really been solved. What it has been accepted, like what's happening right now in Spain, is still a monarchy. And the fight between the monarchy and the republic is still very present. And moving very fast, because I think that two dates are very important. There are many dates in the history of the two islands that we should go and investigate, because I think that as young students, you'd be interested. Example, 1492, 1601, 1789, 1791, 1804, 1844. But we are moving fast because we don't have a lot of time, and this is a very good book that you should check out, people that are interested in history. It's called The Black Jacobins, and it's by C.R.L. James, and from Trinidad. He's from Trinidad. What you have to, we're moving very fast forward because we have a question of time. In 1492, we got rid of 1492, and we have, and then in concluding that part, I'll say that in 1986 it was very funny when at the end of the Duvalier dictatorship, we decided to take the statue of Christopher Columbus and throw him in the ocean. Because the joke was that, well, if he's such a great navigator, he'd be able to swim back to Spain. In 1992, I was invited to be part of a delegation of the counter, what Balaguer was doing in 1982. Or if you've been to the Dominican Republic, there's one of the biggest monuments in Dominican Republic is for Columbus at the Malecon. And it's a huge thing with a guy screaming. I never understood what the whole point was. But anyway, the bourgeoisie decided that they were going to celebrate Christopher Columbus. That Christopher Columbus was one of the greatest heroes of Dominican Republic. I never understood that. And so we have two interpretations of Christopher Columbus. We throw it in the ocean. On the other part, in 1992, he's being celebrated. And so this is our vision, the bourgeoisie vision of who really is the liberator of Christopher Columbus. And I talked to people, I said, what's up with that, And I talked to Dominicans, I said, listen, what's going on here? Moving forward, we have to understand that there is a whole attachment of the bourgeoisie, Dominican bourgeoisie. And if I talk about Dominicans, I'm not talking about the people. I want people to understand that. I want to understand the ruling ideology, who wants to be white, and who also think that Christopher Columbus is a great figure, and so on and so forth. Let's move forward. What's happening in Spain? What's happening in Europe during 1929? And I want to point out the fact that exactly 1929 is very important today in the history of our nations, the two nations. Anybody know what was happening in Europe in 1929? And what was happening here in 1929? In 1929, what you had was the biggest depression was coming. There was an economic crisis, and this was a time of depression. And every time that you have economic crisis, what do? You blame the non-whites, you blame the minorities, and this is exactly what happened in Dominican Republic. It was a crisis around that time. So the fascists were in power in Spain, And who do you think that Trujillo got his inspiration from? The fascists in Spain. The Axis. The Axis was made by the Nazis, the Italians, and also the fascists in Spain. And even right here, there are American volunteers to go to Spain to fight fascism. So the Depression in the United States affected economy all over the world. American investors who had lent money to business people in Europe began to demand payment. The Great Depression caused millions of people all over the world to lose their jobs. So who do you turn to? The Haitians. The Haitians are responsible for what's happening in Dominican Republic. Instead of blaming capitalism, instead of blaming the crisis, so the Great Depression brought new hardship, business fell, and more people lost their job. So we have to really be mindful when they were to call us Spain. I said, you know, I'm Spanish again because I speak Spanish. Am I Spanish? Because I speak Spanish. And we have to understand that as a people, we have to set our priorities, And as a people, while we're here in New York, in the United States, we have to make our bonds together. Because we know that there are differences, because I'm not going to deny that there are differences, but I think our bonds are so strong that we can overcome our differences. I think that when you stop calling yourself Spaniard, because you're not Spaniard, you speak Spanish. I speak French, I'm not French. You call me French, I get insulted. And I think that since 1804, we've been able to get free of French culture. We have gone back to our African roots and appreciate it more and more. We're not Africans either, and we're not going to claim that we're Africans. But we are the type of people that should look inward into ourselves and understand that our future is to be together. It's not going to be easy, but while we're here, we have to do our best to cooperate and change the situation on both sides of the islands, because I want to straight out, I'm not speaking here to defend Haitians and blah, blah, blah. I'm here because Haitians have been suffering. I'm here because Dominicans have been suffering in New York. They've been suffering also. And we should get great bonds. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.